Well, they did it. The Vikings pull out another win, their second win of the season, and we're here to talk about it on the Skol Purple podcast. Apologize for the delay. We've had some technical issues, some other issues, everything that the Vikings dealt with. But we also won because we're here. We're on the air, so we're all winners today. So that's good to have, I guess. Even though Tony, it kind of feels like one of those wins like a couple of weeks ago against the Panthers that it's like, yes, they won, but it's still not great. Not where you want it to be, especially going against a San Francisco team who actually did lose its first game of the season against the Browns. But overall, what were your takeaways from this Vikings victory?
Yeah, I mean, comparing the two wins, it felt like this win was probably a bit more, I don't know if you want to call it decisive, because neither one was decisive, but it felt like we were a bit more maybe in control of this game than we were the Panthers game, at least what it felt like from a fan perspective. The funny thing is when the Bears started to actually push, it was after Fields went out. Which I think is funny because as a Vikings fan, if you've watched this team for long enough, you probably know this, and this has always been a weird just anomaly for me as a Vikings fan. But this team, and it's not just like KOC. I mean, like for the longest I can remember, we always seem to struggle against backup quarterbacks. I don't know what it is. Keep going back to that stupid Cooper Rush game against Dallas. Like, I don't get it. It's like almost every other team, it's like, oh, the backup's coming in. Well, curtains, for that team. Now with the Vikings, it's almost like, oh crap, the backup's coming in. I don't know what it is, but we do not ever fare well against backups. And I don't know what his last name was. I kept wanting to call him Baguette, but he almost brought them back to a victory there at the end. So yeah, it just was a weird win. It definitely felt like which team wants to, I don't know. I mean, I know it's a conspiracy theory that both of these teams are kind of tanking, but it definitely at moments just felt like who wants to lose more. So it doesn't feel great. I'm with you. I think you might be on mute. Sorry.
It did feel like um it did feel like a pair of 1-4 teams, didn't it? It just felt like both teams out there today just did not look good. They weren't very good. And I don't know. I think the thing that's most disappointing in that second half was the offense. I mentioned it to both you and Mike in our group text, but just the offense was abysmal all day, really. I mean, they moved the ball inside the Bears 20-yard line, I think, once. Is that right? One time? Because both of Greg Joseph's field goals were from 50-plus yards. So that's pathetic. I don't care how much improved the Bears defense is. It's still not that great of a defense, guys. And I know you're missing Justin Jefferson, but we have some guys that can make plays on this offense. Now, are we talking like the 98 Vikings offense? No. But there's guys that can make plays on this offense, and they didn't do it. And if it wasn't for the defense, Tony, we'd be having a different conversation right about now, I think.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think there were obviously some bright spots we'll talk about, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But yeah, it's just, the offense, obviously we knew that they were going to struggle a bit with Justin Jefferson being out, right? I mean, that's just, it is what it is. Your best player is on IR. That's obviously going to hurt from a morale standpoint and also just from a game plan scheme perspective, right? What we're able to do, what we're not able to do. But it felt like, boy, our only identity that we kind of had, which was throw to Justin Jefferson, that was gone. So then it really became apparent that this offense has zero identity because it was like, who do you go to? I thought a couple times Addison looked pretty good. I thought a couple times KJ looked pretty good. There were a couple decent catches from Hawkinson. But it never felt put together. It very much, again, felt like an offense that just lacked any sort of actual identity or plan. Where you, even with the Bears, there was like moments where it felt like they kind of had a way to try to attack us. But honestly, that's kind of my issue. If I were to critique the Bears, is that they don't seem like they have an identity. It's just every team,
No.
good or bad, even the bad teams, as long as they're coached well. And boy, I hate to throw on even more shade on KOC than I have been lately, but even the bad teams, if they're well coached, they seem to have some sort of plan. Whether they execute it or not, it's one thing. But it just felt like it was a smattering of things we were throwing against the wall. We weren't sticking with anything. And then, oh, look, we won the game. Like, that was kind of how it felt.
Yeah. Well, and if it didn't feel like the defense won you the game before that final Bears drive, it definitely felt like it afterwards when they came away with the interception, when pretty much, I think the announcers, Brandon Gaudin, the Madden voice, of course, said it pretty well. It put up a duck or whatever he said. It's like, yeah, that was a duck. Like, the Vikings defense maybe even got away with one a little bit from that pressure that DJ Wanham. So credit DJ Wanham for getting that little bit of a pressure on him, but it's like, oh boy, if that was a clean throw, I don't know how good the throw would have been had he had a clean throw off. DJ Moore maybe catches the touchdown. I don't know, but it's just so frustrating, this team. It's frustrating because you know that there's enough talent in that room, in that locker room, to win games where it's not this close all the time. And, we come out of the first half like, oh, the KOC challenged them to go down and score. 3 and out. 3 and out. Vikings looked like they were going to maybe take charge going in to the locker room. They get that touchdown before half. Things like, okay, all right, that sounds all right. That sounds okay. Let's see if we can continue this in the second half. And no. Yeah, it's just like, I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but it is just, I'm just so frustrated with this team right now, Tony. And maybe they could change it if they beat San Francisco in a miracle fashion. Like, I don't know, but yeah, I'm just kind of flabbergasted with why they can't put this talent all together for one game. It doesn't even seem like they can do it for one game.
Yeah, and it's not going to get any easier. I don't know. I mean, I'm scared to know what next week's going to look like, because if you haven't already seen, for those that are watching us live, or I guess if you're catching up with us later on, San Francisco lost to the Cleveland Browns. So, they're going to be looking to have a get-right game against us, which is not a position I'd like to be in if I'm a Vikings fan or a Vikings team member. So, it's not that teams can't lose 2 in a row, but San Francisco's pretty darn good, and I wouldn't be betting against them next week. So, and I hate being, like you said, I hate being a negative Nancy, Debbie Downer, whatever we want to use here. I'm happy we won. I'm not trying to be like, Depression City over here, but it feels like we're getting by the seat of our pants. And if that's all we can do, in the long run, losses are probably more beneficial. and that's not me wanting us to tank. For the Twitterverse.
It's just true.
Yeah, I don't want us to tank, and I do want us to win every single week. I'm gonna go into next week hoping we can win, right? Like I hope we can shock the world and make this record look somewhat decent enough where to it can give us some hope. But I'm telling you, unless that happens, there's no use of us scraping by with a bunch of lame duck wins that still get us nowhere and then push us further back in the draft. Could we still have a
Yep.
good draft? Yeah, sure. I mean, I get it, and everybody's got their analytics and their statistics, but lest us forget, like the higher up in the draft we are, the less of a chance that we would have to do any sort of like trading or moving around because we'd already own that spot versus having to try to move up even further. So I think that's what some people lose sight of is like
Right.
everybody wants to talk about, well, you don't want to all these teams, they're mortgaging the future to move up and get all these. Well, that's why I'm saying let's try to not have to move up. Like let's try
Right.
to see if we can just own a really high pick and we don't have to give anything up for it. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we saw KJ Osborne. This is something to talk a little bit about. KJ Osborne kind of emerged in that first half, made some nice catches. After we've kind of been saying, all right, it's time to let loose Jordan Addison in that number 2 wide receiver role. KJ Osborne came out and played pretty well in that first half, had a nice few catches, and then just for the most part, I think he had 1 catch in the second half, 3 catches in the first half, just disappeared. Jordan Addison only had 3 catches in the game as well. Um, I don't know if it's really the Bears being this good in coverage or if it is anything to do with Cousins not having the time or just not, as we've said, with the pocket presence sometimes with Cousins. As Mr. Too Evil to Hope always likes to remind us, Cousins is trash. Yeah. So appreciate Too Evil and Skolden in here. But yeah, it's just it just really frustrated me watching the Viking offense in that second half. Like I don't know how you can leave that second half amused or pleased with how things turned out. And Tony, I mean, maybe you feel differently, but it almost feels like this team is very similar to last year's team, but last year's team was just able to find the ways to win, and now we're finding out what happens when you don't find the ways to win for most part for the most part this season. 2-4 at this point. So basically, we're finding out what would have happened had the Vikings maybe not had a little bit of luck go their way, and also, the turnovers from a year ago weren't a big deal. Turnovers a huge deal this year. Vikings won the turnover battle today. So that was the difference in the game. It literally was the difference in the game today. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's frustrating. It really is. I think I'm very pleased with how the defense played, even though that last drive with Bajent, however you say his name, um, Cabbage Patch Kids. I don't know whatever. But
it was French baguette.
French baguette. There you go. There you go. But yeah, he's. I agree with you. They struggle against backup quarterbacks and rookie quarterbacks, and Bajent, Baguette, whatever, he fit that mold in both forms. So there you go. But yeah, everybody feel free to get your comments in. We'll be able to try and answer any questions you have, or at least attempt to without crying or without yelling or any else in between, I guess. Laughing. Well, we'll laugh. The other two, maybe, hopefully not. But anyways, so I guess what was your overall takeaways from the offense and the defensive side? I know you talked a little bit about it, but obviously defensively, again, Danielle Hunter looking good. I know there was a couple of flags in the game, a couple of questionable officiating things again, which we could talk about. But if the Vikings would have lost this game, I would not be blaming the officiating. If you're one of those fans that just blames the officiating every time your team loses, like I'm not saying that it's that the officiating never is to be blamed in certain situations, because there are definitely those times, but when you had 15 yards in the fourth quarter before drive or whatever it was, that's not on officiating, buddy. So, anyways, Tony, what are your thoughts on that, I guess, and the defense?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the offense was poor. Poor showing from the offense for the most part today. It just again, it's the lack of identity. The lack of identity leads to a lack of consistency, and it's hard to watch because it just feels like they don't know what they want to do or how they're going to accomplish what they want to accomplish. Part of me feels like, I know you mentioned this team being similar to last year. Honestly, I think one of the big things is that Kevin O'Connell was a brand new coach last year and did a lot of different things. And I think, like anybody, he had some success, and other teams need to figure him out. And I think, I hate to say it, but I think maybe some teams have figured him out. I think that might be part of it. And it's up to him to pivot and to evolve and to progress. And that's what every coach needs to do. If you're a one trick pony, you're going to find yourself, hanging out with Mike Zimmer pretty quickly. So, we'll see how he responds to that. As far as the comment here for Wanham, yeah, Wanham had a good game. It certainly seemed like Wanham and Daniil both were very hungry today. Not to like be a Debbie Downer on this one, but since we're already kind of going down this road, it really stinks that Davenport got hurt again. So we're gonna see what the deal is with that ankle. Unfortunately, that's what he was dealing with before. So hopefully, it's just something where they were, going to be cautious and we'll get him back. But, we'll see. But what's too evil to hope here is they say, will this team still sell if we lose next week? Or is there some dumb amount of hope left to make a run? And then, yeah, talking about the refs kind of gifting us some calls. I would say, the Vikings and Bears, I would say, had some questionable calls go both ways on this one. Kind of to your point, Carson, there were some really bad calls against the Vikings, but there was also probably some tic-tacky calls that went our way too. And so I think that's just the way game goes. Honestly, the less of the premier teams, we'll say, tend to get the lesser of the officiating crews as well. And so it's not a surprise to me that there was just some sloppiness all over. I mean, honestly, it was just a sloppy day. It was a sloppy day by both teams. It was a sloppy day by the refs. It just, the whole thing, it just felt like I was watching, the ACC network and not a Fox News broadcast or whatever, or Fox network broadcast. But yeah, it was very sloppy. So yeah, no, and I thought the defense was okay. I thought overall that they were, again, the brighter spot. Certainly shout out to Jordan Hicks, had a heck of a day for himself today. So good job there. I thought Byron Murphy had a few good plays, especially towards the end. I thought Caleb Evans again showed his willingness to get in there, and he's a good tackler. I mean, he's young, and let's just hope that he continues to progress. Is he a guy that I'd want to rely on being my mainstay shutdown corner right now? No. But, do I like him in the rotation? Yeah. And, he's young, so we'll see what happens there.
Well, speaking of rotation, we need to see more of Cam Akers. We've got to we have got to stop giving a bunch of carries to Alexander Madison. I mean, I like Alexander as a dude. He's a great dude, great in the community, and he does have some good games every now and then. But man, oh man, Mike even mentioned this, I think, in the group chat. Like, he misses some holes. This offensive line has been pretty solid so far this season, and when Cam Akers has been in there, he seems like he's got a pretty good burst if he gets the opportunity. And he only had 2 touches today, Tony. How do you let that happen? 2 touches for your number 2 running back who supposedly was coming in here. You trade for him. Like, you just trade for him for depth purposes? No, you should want him to come in here and make some plays, you know? Like, I mean, they didn't give up much for him, so I get that, but it's like, still, if you make that kind of a deal, if you just wanted a body, you could have brought somebody in off the street, you know? Um, I think he's got to see more playing time. Um, Madison, I don't know if you saw is like 18 carries for 44 yards. Ugh. Ugh. It's not good. So they have got to figure out something, and it shouldn't just be with turnovers. If you can't produce, you shouldn't be playing. That's the way Kevin O'Connell should go about it, especially if the Vikings are in these close games and they're losing games because somebody's not being productive. They need to pull people. Like, even TJ Hawkinson, as much of a fan of TJ Hawkinson as I am, there's still some times when he drops some passes. It's like, man, well, maybe you need to pull him out, put Josh Oliver in there, or put even Johnny Munt, who I don't really like at all, but put him in there if he's going to make a play, you know. TJ had a better game today compared to the last couple, but anyways, yeah, the whole running back situation, they need to stop acting like it's a bell cow. Like, stop it. Go give the ball to more than just one player for the majority of the game. Like, this is a committee. This is no longer a bell cow situation.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there's always you question moves and you question the reasons why they make certain decisions. You know, what is Akers not doing that's not allowing him to get more time? Is it purely that they just want to stick with Madison because that's been kind of the plan? Which, in my opinion, is foolish. And I really hope that's not the case, because that was probably one of my top 3, top 2 criticisms of the Zimmer regime, was that I felt like they would stick with things too long, just out of principle, which is fine. It's good to be principled. But at the same time, you're going to get into a spot where we need to win games. That's the point. The point is winning football games. And just because you drafted a guy a certain place or you pay a guy a certain amount of money, it doesn't matter. We're there to win football games. So, yeah, it is what it is. So, yeah, it would be nice to see him get some more touches. It could be for other reasons too. Could be like a pass blocking thing. Maybe he doesn't do well there, or I don't know. Oh, it's Rap. Yeah.
Rap is in. Rap. My guy Rap. He says this win feels like a loss. Why is that? I shouldn't feel like this. I hear you, man. I'm right there with you. Yeah. We've been kind of Debbie down in this whole thing the first little bit here. We're kind of like, man, this doesn't feel like a win. This doesn't feel like we should be having good conversations. This is something I want to discuss here, Tony. I saw this kind of in the stats when I was putting these together, and Kevin Seifert, ESPN, tweeted this out. 2 oddities that might matter only to me, he says, but in the 2 Vikings victories this season, Kirk Cousins had his lowest passing totals of the season, 139 at Carolina and 181 at Chicago. And the Vikings defense has returned a fumble for a TD in both of those wins. So why is that? Like, that, I really want to know that. Like, I don't know why that is. That just is baffling. Like, Kirk Cousins goes out and he throws throws a lot of yards and does all this stuff, but yet, you lose 27-20 last week to Kansas City. You lose the week before, or you win the week before when he's crap. And then the first 3 games of the season, he balls out and you don't do anything. Now I get part of it is the turnover thing too, but it's like, I just don't get it. And it seemed like that was part of it last year too. When Kirk would not always have the best numbers, but they would win. It's like, I don't get why that is the case. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there are 2 things that come to mind here. One is that, and then this is something that I've always been critical of Kirk with. I feel like Kirk doesn't know how to press on the gas. Like, I don't think he doesn't have that gear that says, I'm up by 10 or I'm up by 13. I want to be up by 23. I want to be up by 28. Like, he gets into conserva Kirk mode. And so there's that, where he doesn't push.
People love that.
Yeah. The other might be, the other issue might be that, Kirk just, the defense steps up when Kirk is not playing well, and things kind of, how the game flow goes. Game script determines what this team is going to do, and our offense is obviously going to pivot to what the defense is able to do or not do, and then also vice versa, right? So I don't know. I have my issues obviously with Kirk Cousins. I'm not I suppose nobody needs to hear them over and over and over again, but we all need to get it through our thick skulls that Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. He is not a great quarterback. He is not a generational talent. He is a upper echelon tier 2 quarterback. And that's okay. There aren't many of those, they're good. It just means he needs a good team and a good roster around him. And if you want to get mad about anything, don't get mad that he's that. Get mad that the team hasn't given him the type of roster that would make him succeed. If you don't want to be mad at Kirk Cousins, then just be mad that we don't have San Francisco's roster. Like, that's the only other option, because it's unrealistic to think that Kirk is anything more than that.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of quarterbacks, who struggled today? Quarterback number 13 for the San Francisco 49ers. He did not look great against Cleveland. So I'm just saying there's a history between Kyle Shanahan and Kirk Cousins. I don't know if anybody on this show is aware of that, but there is a history there, and there is a trade deadline coming up. The Vikings are 2-4. If they lose to San Francisco, it's 2-5. I'm just saying. It's not going to happen. But anyways, I'm too hopeful.
I think the hard part there, the hard sell, is that currently San Francisco is paying Brock Purdy in high V coupons. So Kirk Cousins is getting paid quite a bit more, I would say, than Purdy. Purdy's getting paid it's like league minimum or something like that.
Right. Well, you posed me the question yesterday. Would you take a trade straight up, Kirk Cousins for Brock Purdy? And I said yes. I would do it. The 49ers probably wouldn't do it, but I would do it if I was the Vikings, because at least because here's the thing. We know what the Vikings have in Kirk Cousins. He's, like you said, a good quarterback, not great. You're not going to go very far with him if you have a average to a little above average roster. You have to have a really good to great roster for him to take you very far in the postseason. And that's what San Francisco has. And so can Brock Purdy, maybe do basically what Kirk Cousins has done, like getting to 500. That's not a big deal. I mean, that's what Kirk Cousins has done for most of his career. It's like, oh, I don't know. I'm just ready to pull the plug. I think I told you that yesterday, Tony. I've probably said it on this show before many times. Pull the plug on Cousins. Pull the plug on that whole saga so we can get that era of Vikings football behind us. If you're a Cousins fan, then go be a Cousins fan. Let's separate the two finally. Like, we're Vikings fans here. We want to see the Vikings win. We don't care about who the quarterback is as long as the Vikings are winning. And unfortunately, Kirk Cousins has been mid, I guess, if you want to use the Gen Zer term or the whatever term you want to call it, I guess. But it's like you can't do it anymore. Like there's not enough that he can do to make up for the deficiencies. So, anyways.
Well, I mean, and here's the thing. There are moments where he looks good. And
right.
There are games where he plays great. We're talking about overall on the whole, right? So, at any given time, any given season, we're talking about maybe 1 to 3 quarterbacks in the league that are an elite status, right? Generational talent status. So I'm not saying that it's like some common thing to find these guys. It's not. It's extremely rare. And then you kind of have I always say there's like 4 tiers of quarterbacks. There's the generational talents. That's, again, maybe 1 to 3 guys in the league at any given time. Then you've got the tier ones, which are very good quarterbacks, consistently very good. But there's still something. There's still something. They're not. They're bound to have an issue here and there. There's some weaknesses, and then you've got your tier 2s, and your tier 2s, it's probably the larger group. Higher tier 2s, you've got guys like Kirk Cousins, you got guys like Dak Prescott, you got guys like Matt Ryan when Matt Ryan was playing. I mean, that they're all the same. I mean, obviously there's variations of how good these guys are, but you can't tell me you didn't think Matt Ryan was a good quarterback. I think Matt Ryan was a very good quarterback in his prime, but he needed a team around him. It just was what it was, and that's okay. So it's just, we need to just let go of this idea that Kirk Cousins is this elite quarterback, because he's not. Rap! Look at this guy.
What's good, man?
Speaking of guys who doesn't think Kirk Cousins is elite, welcome in, Rap.
Hey, for sure, man. You know that. Hey, but I'm gonna tell you right now. Do y'all have any feedback? Is there any feedback coming through? I just want to make sure because I'm in my car.
You sound pretty good, man. You sound pretty good.
Perfect. Yeah, man. Listen, this offense, man. First of all, man, I'm glad to be on with y'all, man. I miss y'all, man, for sure.
Yes.
Man. Love the show.
Glad to have you here, man.
This offense is just sad. You hear me? And it starts with our quarterback, man. It starts with our quarterback. It's time for a change. I think the silver lining is this, that the way we're playing right now just shows that we have to move on from this guy, man. It's inevitable now. It's inevitable. He's showing that, so think about, did y'all talk about that interception? Did y'all talk about that? How it happened?
Oh, the strip sack kind of interception fumble or whatever it ended up being.
Right.
We didn't really talk about that, but go ahead.
The no pocket awareness.
All right, so yeah, I'm big on that, Tony. Hey, he got no awareness, right? And part of that is sliding protection, right? Because this is the thing. You've been in the league for how many years now? These are things that you're supposed to know as a veteran quarterback and being a leader of this team. This guy just doesn't have any leader traits, man. He has no awareness. He lacks it. And that's why we're in these positions over and over again, where we can't just put a team out of their misery. We're always going to keep a team right there where it comes down. Because think about it. If that quarterback that's coming from D2, that was an undrafted free agent, didn't throw that duck up, there is no, hey, we might be having a different conversation right now, man, be losing this game by 1 point. I'm going to tell you right now, because, hey,
yeah,
for us to allow the Bears to even be that close, same thing with the Panthers. The same exact type of game. for us to have to depend on our defense to put up points, because if our defense didn't score points, we're still having a different conversation right now. It's sad, man. This offense is trash. I mean, I hate to be negative after a win, but I mean, it's reality, man. But yeah, man, I can rant all night though, man. I'm telling y'all right now. Hey, you don't want to get me started.
Yeah, we hear
For
you,
sure.
man. We hear you. It was a miserable performance, especially in that second half from the offense. Like you mentioned, the fumble. It ended up being a fumble, is what they classified it as, the Cousins
Right.
turnover. So I guess, hey, he didn't throw an interception. Oh, but he did fumble. So I guess whatever you want to do with that. So he ended up fumbling twice. That backwards pass too. That was, what are you doing, man? Like, I get where he was trying to go with the ball, but it's like,
Right.
if you know you're not going to be able to get it to him accurately, just take the sack, man.
He's being Kirk Cousins, man. You know, being Kirk
Yeah.
Cousins, man. He's Kirking out there, Kirking.
That's right. That's right. Go ahead, Tony. You got something to say? I could feel it. I could see it.
Well, I was just gonna basically go and pile on, but yeah, it was just not, and that's kind of what I mean about Cousins, is that he has moments where he looks great, and if you give him time, he will carve you up. I mean, he will turn you into Swiss cheese. If we had, let's say, a top 3 offensive line in the league, he'd be amazing. The problem is that once he gets off script, it just falls apart. I mean, he can't, and that's okay. That's why he's solidified himself in that tier 2 group of quarterbacks, in my opinion. And again, I just think it's foolish to think that he's anything more than that. And I get it's tough. You know, it's like being in a relationship, you know, especially one that's not terrible. But if it's not great, are we just going to settle for okay? Or we're going to keep searching for great? And I think we need, hey, we only live once. Let's search for great.
Man, good take.
Yeah.
I like that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too, like, how much longer are you going to continue to be? I don't know where I'm going. I lost my train of thought. Anyways,
There's so much. There's so much, Carson, man. There's just so much,
man.
You know,
there's so much stress, Viking stress going on up here. But going back to the whole rookie quarterback thing, like the rookie / backup quarterback thing, like that is frustrating to watch a little bit, even though they ended up winning the game. Like, he almost drove down there 2 times and did more than anything that Kirk Cousins did in that second half. So it's also another thing, like, man, the people that are like, yeah, well, what if you get rid of Cousins? Then you gotta have this terrible quarterback. You're gonna have, I remember Dave, on one time I sent you a video of my reaction to it, Rap, of when Dave was like, oh, well, we could have had Zach Wilson. It's like, yeah, and be what, 1-3 like we were? It's like,
and still be 1-3, yeah.
That's still be 1-3. It doesn't matter how you get there, you're still 1-3. So it's like, man, who really cares? If you're 1-3, you're 1-3. Now you're 2-4. But anyways, it's.
But real quick too, Carson. I always tell people too, like, you know, you could get a Zach Wilson. You also could get a Justin Herbert. You also could get I mean, it goes both ways. You know what I mean? Part of that comes with just knowing how to evaluate. And a lot of times too, it just comes with when you draft a rookie quarterback, like the situation, like, think about it. A rookie quarterback, like a Zach Wilson, for example, going into New York is way different than if he would have came into Minnesota with a Justin Jefferson, a Dalvin Cook at the time. You know what I mean? Like, he would have probably looked a little different. Not to say that he would have been, you know what I mean, Patrick Mahomes 2.0, but he probably would have performed a little better, because a lot of it has to be based on, when you draft a quarterback, you have to be ready to build your offense and mold it around that guy. You know what I mean? Kind of like the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson. They couldn't keep the same offense they had with Joe Flacco. It wouldn't have been the same. You know what I mean? They had to adjust. And I think that's what a lot of times we lacked over the years. Where yeah, you bring in new guys, but if you're not gonna adjust your offense to mold around that player's skill set, then yeah, you're gonna fail 9 times out of 10. You know what I mean? So. I mean, hey, I'm ready to draft a quarterback, man, and put Kevin O'Connell to the test. But with this play calling that I see Kevin O'Connell doing, he might not last. He might not last 2 more years or even a damn year. You know what I mean? It's sad,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
and I think I wonder how much he feels restricted based on the quarterback and based on um even the running back situation. Like we were talking about the running back situation with Madison earlier, 18 carries for 44 yards. Are you kidding? Like that's just terrible. And it's
told
not
you.
like you're playing a great Bears defense. Like you weren't playing a good Bears defense. And the offensive line, like I don't know if you saw some of those replays, Rap, but there were holes and he wasn't
Oh,
hitting the right holes.
right.
Cam Akers needs to get more touches.
He does. And you know what? People that know me that have been watching my channel know that I'm big on Dalvin Cook brought way more. Listen, we got rid of, first of all, we got rid of 8 touchdowns, but that was just last year and 1,200 yards with Dalvin Cook, bro. Who is making up for that? That's what I be trying to ask the fan base. Like, who on the roster right now is making? I know people were bringing up the analytical thing about he was getting negative, this, that, and the third, but listen. When it all boiled down, he scored 8 touchdowns. All right, so people can do the math on how many points that is, especially in the red zone. And he had almost 1,200 yards, bro. And then the year before that, Cook has a nose for the end zone. 12 touchdowns the season before, 16 touchdowns the one year. Like he's a ball, bro. We don't have anybody on our team now that's a touchdown that has a nose for the end zone. Because even Justin Jefferson being our best player, he really doesn't have a nose for the end zone. He'll get you down there, but I mean, for the most part, he won't put it in. And Thielen too. He was a touchdown man, touchdown guy. So, hey
Yeah.
man, we struggling, man. We're struggling.
And I think another thing with Jefferson too, I'll let Tony get in here in a moment, but Jefferson, when you're down there and there's less area to cover in the red zone, like teams are just going to key in on him, which is why I don't think you have as much success with Jefferson in the red zone because there's less area to have to defend for one, and I think it's easier maybe even to double team or even triple team him down there compared to in the open field. So I think that's part of it and why Adam Thielen was crucial in that regard. I don't miss him too much, to be honest with you, but I do think in the red zone we're seeing that lacking a little bit so far this year. But Tony, anything you want to add on any of what Rap said?
I just think that in general, and I know this is like the low hanging fruit, but the turnovers are absolutely killing this team. Like, and if we look at the first 3 games, I think 3, maybe even 4 of the turnovers that we had were all in the red zone. So I mean, that's all points, right? And when we're talking about games that are this close, that's the difference potentially between winning and losing. So
Yeah.
I know we can always talk about like, well, if it bounces this way and blah blah blah. Now all of a sudden we're 5-1 or whatever. We all talk like that. I mean, but there is something to that, and I think that's probably why we've seen the lack of efficiency, and I think it just snowballs. So I think what's happening is we have got a lack of confidence with this offense. I think Kevin O'Connell's trying to salvage what he can. And instead of kind of bringing us back to fundamental football and the basics, it feels like absolute freaking chaos. Like it feels like, again, we're just throwing stuff up against the wall and then seeing what works. And then hopefully at the end of the game, did we win? Like that, honestly, that's how it feels. That's how today felt. That's how because it's just, at least last year, we found ways to attack defenses offensively, and then we kept doing that. Like we would keep attacking, and it just feels like we have no plan. We have no game plan this year. There's even when Jefferson's in, obviously he's on IR now. To be honest with you, in some ways, I was a little excited to see what they would do today because they couldn't rely on Justin Jefferson. They couldn't go back to the old trusty. They actually had to be creative. And I saw it a little bit I thought maybe they'd get Powell involved a little bit, but it was the same kind of deal. They tried getting creative with Powell a couple times. It didn't work. So then they got scared. So then they started to pivot to something else. It's like, no, guys, like stick with it. Be creative. Like don't abandon game plans over and over again because it's just going to be chaos, and chaos is not winning football. So
Right.
we'll figure it out. Hopefully. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Hey, before I get out of here though, man, because I gotta handle some business here, man. But I'm gonna tell you, I talked about this last night, man, and I think this on top of a good take too, Tony, man, because I agree 100% on what you just spilled just now. Like that's absolutely correct. But I think another part is this: the leadership, man. We don't have anybody on this team that holds people accountable, right? So I know we'll say, turnovers. Yes, they killed us. They did. But a good football team, a team that has at least a couple leaders that are actual leaders. I'm not talking about a C on your jersey and we look at them because they're a captain. No, you have to be born with this, right? And we just don't have that person, man. We don't. And that's another thing with Thielen and Cook that they brought. And I threw this out there last night too. Zadarius Smith. That's why the vibes were so different last year with this football team, because we had those personalities on the roster that knew how to pick up a team, get a team encouraged. This year, Josh Oliver fumbled. This is the biggest thing that I noticed last week. When Josh Oliver fumbled, he went to the sideline and stood on the island by himself. Nobody came up to him. Nobody talked to him. Kirk Cousins didn't walk up to him and said, "Hey, buddy, you're good. Hey, you made a mistake. Hey, you'll get it next time." I mean, those little things mean so much when you're playing on a team sport like that have little leaders that just are vocal. It's good. We have a bunch of silent leaders, including JJ, Harrison Smith, Daniil Hunter. They lead by example. Yeah, you need those guys too, but you also need those couple guys that are willing to, hey, let this player know when he did wrong, but tell him, hey, we're gonna be all right though. We'll get it on the next one. You need that, man, and we don't have that, man. We just don't, including the coach. It's sad. It's sad.
We kind of need to use a baseball reference. We kind of need a Carlos Correa in there, from a Twins perspective, to just kind of, he's been there before for a lot of the rookies for the Twins this year, and even though the Twins season didn't end as I was hoping it would, and whatever, but he still has a way of turning a locker room around, leading that. I don't really see that outside of the head coach, and maybe the head coach, the discipline thing, I would say, is the big thing for him. He doesn't really maybe hold people accountable. He talked about pulling people if they're not going to hang on to the football. We haven't seen that really come into fruition. And I even talked about earlier, Rap, like pulling people if they're not performing, like Madison, 18 for 44, right. Get out. You're done. Sit down.
Put the best football player. That's another thing that I don't like. Put the best players on the field, man. You know what I mean? Like all this friendship, and that goes back to when we very first brought him in, the collaboration thing. It's going too far now. It's time to put it to an end, man. It was good last year. Now it's time to handle business, man. All the friendships and I've known you a couple months longer, so you're going to play ahead of this guy. Man, listen, put the best players on the field, please, and get the best players the football. Like even today, Jordan Addison, man, there's no reason why Jordan Addison shouldn't have gotten at least 8 more targets, in my opinion, bro. Like throw him the damn football, man. Like seriously, is that too much to ask for, man? I just don't get it, man. I don't. And I don't think we ever will, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
It's crazy.
Yes, indeed. Well, we'll let you go, Rap. I know you got some
man.
business
Hey, I
to
appreciate
take
y'all,
care of.
fellas, man. Yeah, man, for sure, man. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to have you on again. So take care,
absolutely.
man. Skol.
Absolutely, man. Thank you, fellas. All right, man.
See you, man.
Yeah, so kind of like what Rap was talking about. He's frustrated. I think we're all kind of in that same boat now at this point. We're just all we want this team to show us a reason why we should be excited, and really there hasn't been a big reason to be excited. I mean, I guess, I don't want to totally say it's terrible, like there's no hope, there's nothing in the future, because I do think that there's been some strides defensively that we've seen from the Vikings this season with Brian Flores. Now, how much longer does that continue? If Brian Flores leaves this offseason, who knows? That's kind of my fear. I don't know if you're in the same boat, Tony, but I'm kind of wondering. I mean, I'm hopeful that he'll stay. I hope the Wilfs will be like, yeah, we're going to take care of you. We're going to pay you what you want. Even as a defensive coordinator, pay him what he wants. Like, keep him around. But it's like, man, what other improvements have been made? Like the offense, yes, top all this category stuff. Well, where was it today? You know, they're performing well in a lot of categories, but those games end up being losses. So what does it matter? It does not matter if you're 16th in points per game. It doesn't matter if you're in the lower third in the league in offensive red zone efficiency. You know, those things matter. And another thing I was going to mention to wrap, and I think I talked to you and maybe even mentioned it already here. It's like you had one red zone trip today against the Bears. You got a touchdown, thankfully, but I think there was only one, maybe two red zone trips, but I think there was only one because the field goals from Greg Joseph were 50 plus, and he missed one of the three. It's like you got to be better against the Bears defense than that. Like even the Commanders, they scored 20 points, and yeah. So anyways, and really the offense only scored 12 points. So the 19 points is not because of the offense. So again, frustrating. It's like we did it for 13 games last year, Tony. A win's a win, but boy, oh boy, this doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. I mean, I suppose not to beat a dead horse, but
yeah,
you know, I think we've aired all of our grievances. I just think that this team's got a long ways to go, and I have a feeling that unless we somehow catch lightning in a bottle for the rest of the season, that this team is going to look pretty different next year. And you know, you mentioned Flores. Yeah, I mean, I do have a fear that he will leave. That's something that I thought about when we signed him, just because
right.
he's a high-profile coach. He's a highly sought-after coach. I think that we will definitely not want to sign Carson Wentz.
No. Sorry, too evil to hope.
Yeah, but I would say that I'm with you. I hope we do decide to retain his services, and I think we will. I have this weird feeling that we should have him for at least one more season. I think he'll stick with the team just because of his relationship with KOC, and I do think the Wilfs have shown certainly an interest in paying people what they feel like they deserve, and I do think Flores has proven that he certainly is a step up from what we had going on before. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, big test next week coming up. You and I will talk about that, I'm sure, as the week progresses a bit more. But glad to get the W. Always happy to see a Vikings win. Don't ever get confused with my criticisms that I don't want this team to win. I always want this team to win. But it just, in the grand scheme of things, I know we've got a long road ahead.
Sorry, too evil to hope. I know he's got a ring. It's what do they say on Twitter? It's a Mickey Mouse ring because he didn't play in the postseason games. Nick Foles did. So now I know a lot of people will say, well, they would have won by more had Carson Wentz played. I actually don't think they would have won the Super Bowl had Carson Wentz played, but that's just my opinion. That's my opinion, and he's been trash ever since that one good year. So, but trading for Kyler Murray or Zach Wilson, if you miss out on a first-round quarterback, I'm not opposed to it. You know, I think I'd be probably I don't know. The only thing I would say to that, and maybe Tony, if you want to speak on this, then we'll do our game balls and get out of here. But I don't know if I really like either one of these guys in terms of team building, because they both seem to have had issues with their teams. Zach Wilson calling out teammates or whatever at one point, and Kyler Murray too busy with his Call of Duty to all this different stuff. So, anyways, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just a thing that is a public thing that we think of, and maybe actually people do enjoy those guys as teammates. I don't know, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't want either of those guys, to be honest with you. I mean, and part of it is just that, I feel like we're trading one problem for another, and I feel like the problem might be worse, if that makes sense. I mean, we don't know. I feel like Wilson probably would be. Either one of those guys would be, in my opinion, a stopgap for somebody for the future, like a young, hopefully franchise generational talent guy that we still have yet to really have on this team. So, Kyler would come at a more expensive price tag. We would have to worry about issues with him again, kind of committing to being great, which is never a good thing in the NFL. And then I just think Wilson is definitely a downgrade from Kirk Cousins. So, I mean, at that point, yeah, again, I don't know. It would be like, the only reason why I'd want Wilson would be to give a rookie time. Like, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Like, it would be very much like an Andy Dalton, Bryce Young sort of a situation where you bring in a veteran as like more of a stopgap. Now, I know Bryce Young's been playing, but you kind of get what I mean.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and give our game balls. We'll each give one here today. I don't know if anybody on offense really deserves it. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. Again, I know we're just piling on, even though it's a win. Somebody actually asked me today. They're like, "You should be happy. Your team won. Why aren't you happy?" Or all this stuff. It's like, well, they're 2-4, and I don't really see this team going very far. It's like, well, they won. Anyways, I don't know. Maybe I should be happier. I'm happier in other regards in my life, but not necessarily with this team. But anyways, my game ball is going to come after your game ball. I'm giving you the game ball first, Tony.
Well, if you're going to give it to me first, then I'm going to take the ultra low hanging fruit. And it's going to be Jordan Hicks. So obviously, big game for him, scoop and score, interceptions. Did he have one or two? I think he had one for sure.
He had one interception, one fumble recovery.
That's right. Okay, so it was the scoop and score and then the one interception. So yeah, I mean, and that was the difference in the game, was him picking up that fumble and taking it to the house. So good job, Jordan Hicks. It's funny because I thought about all the conversations we had last year and then into the offseason about how, I know you and I, not to put words in your mouth, but certainly myself, we were kind of like, God, Jordan Hicks is more one of the more weaker links on this football team, or at least on the defensive side of the ball. And we really ragged on him quite a bit. And it just goes to show how poor the coaching was last year. And I'm not saying that Jordan Hicks is like this amazing player. It just, he looks like a guy that actually has a place on this team. Whereas last year it was like, what is this guy doing? Why would we even have this guy on our roster? So what a difference coaching can make. So game ball goes Jordan Hicks. Good job. Again, he probably was without him and some of the plays he made today, it might be a different outcome.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think maybe Brian Flores has utilized him better than what Ed Donatel did, and that's, I'm sure, no surprise to anybody. It's like you got a present and then you opened up and it's a $5 covered in poop. There you go.
I mean, I'm happy about the $5.
It's just not a fan of what I have to do to get the $5. Clean off this crap, literally. But my game ball is going to go to Danielle Hunter. I thought he performed really well, even if he didn't get. He did have 2 sacks, but he felt like he could have had more had there not been some holding at different times throughout the game. So Danielle Hunter, my game ball for today. Good point on your end earlier about Marcus Davenport. Unfortunate to see him go down. Hopeful that the Vikings can get him back because, like we've said the last few times, he is pretty good when he's healthy and he's in there. Gives the Vikings a much more complete look on the defensive line, even though still is not a great defensive line. I've said that before, but even though DJ Wanham steps up at times, he's much more of a rotational player, I think. And Patrick Jones, he's been silent this year. I don't think he's probably getting a whole lot of time in there, but anyways, Danielle Hunter, my game ball, your game ball, Jordan Hicks, a couple of good performances from those guys today. I think that is going to put a wrap on our show. No pun intended. Our guest rap a little bit ago. Hopefully we'll get to talk to Rap a little bit more as the season goes on. I think we have a lot of things where we agree with Rap on in terms of what the future could hold. But how about Mike McDaniel today? He got the win after falling behind early to Carolina, and then one of the things he does in the press conference, he points at one of the press guys' shoes. It's like pointing out his shoes. He's like, that's what one of his reactions was to a question or something. Hey, I see your shoes. Those are really nice or whatever. I'm going to have to watch the clip. But anyways, things are going pretty well over there in Miami.
Yes, they are.
So, all right. Well, Tony, appreciate you joining us, joining me and everybody else joining us. And next time could be a little bit of a different story. We will try and have a 49ers preview of some kind this week. We'll see if we can get it done or not. My week's looking pretty busy, but we'll see if Tony can get something out to you guys. And as always, Skol.
Skol, baby.